26-year-old Amineh Bahrami was a young woman with big ambitions, studying electronics and working at a medical engineering company. In October 2005, she was leaving work in Tehran when she was confronted by a young man she had repeatedly refused to marry. The man, Majid Movahedi, unable to cope with rejection, had pestered and threatened her many times before that day, but she had no idea what he was about to do. He walked up to her with a red container in his hands. He looked Amineh in her eyes and threw acid in her face. Her attacker, a man 5 years her junior and a former university classmate, remained in the crowd that circled her as she screamed for help, observing her anguish at close quarters. Amineh was left blind and disfigured. Majid and Amineh met in a workshop in college. One day his mother called her and told her that Majid wanted her. Amineh rejected his offer for marriage, which infuriated him. He called her and threatened that she would have to either marry him or he would ruin her life. Amineh reported the harassment to the police, but they didn't take it seriously. Her tragedy made headlines around the world. The Iranian press focused on her extraordinary pursuit of justice, covering every twist and turn in her agonizing case. After the attack, Majid surrendered to the police. The judge presiding over the case intended to hand down a death sentence, but Amineh wanted qisas, retribution, which is allowed under Islam's Sharia law. She wanted him to lose his sight as well, an eye for an eye, inflict the same life on him that he inflicted on her. However, Iranian women have only half the worth of men in legal spheres. In courts, for example, a woman's testimony carries only half the weight of a man's. In a literal application of an eye for an eye, the judge initially sentenced Majid to be blinded in one eye, even though Amineh had lost sight in both her eyes. Eventually, though, she was granted a full retribution, and in November 2008, a Tehran court ordered Majid to be blinded in both eyes. The sentence drew international attention, with human rights activists branding it inhumane. Iran's Islamic Penal Code allows the victim or their heir to personally execute the condemned prisoner in retribution cases. In hangings, the heir has the option of pushing away the chair the convict is standing on. In Amineh's case, she or her family were allowed to drip acid into Majid's eyes. A media uproar led to the postponement of the sentence being carried out, but eventually, in July 2011, Amineh and her family went to Tehran's Judiciary Hospital, where Majid was due to be placed unconscious before acid was dripped into his eyes. Because Amineh was blind, she couldn't carry out the sentence herself, so her younger brother agreed to do it. Majid was swearing as they prepared him on the bed. He showed no regret, no indication that he was sorry. At the last minute, as officials were counting down, Amineh pardoned Majid. She couldn't do it. She knew she could not live with it until the end of her life. She said she would have suffered and burned twice had she done it. Despite the pardon, Amineh did, however, insist her attacker remain in prison until his family paid for her badly needed treatment. Her decision to pardon Majid was warmly received in Iran, and within a few months, a sculpture of her was displayed in a Tehran exhibition. Consequently, an increasing number of women in Iran became the targets of similar acid attacks. Somaya Mehri died from a respiratory problem caused by an acid attack by her husband. Somaya's husband, a drug smuggler, was unhappy that she wanted a divorce, and one night while she and their 3-year-old daughter were asleep, he threw a jar of acid in their faces. Then, a series of acid attacks on young women in Isfahan, a city popular with tourists, caused horror and outrage. Unlike previous cases, which were usually driven by personal disputes, these incidents seemed to have another root. As many as 8 women were reported to have been attacked. Many Iranians believe that women in Isfahan were targeted by hardliners for wearing clothes considered inappropriate. The authorities, who have encouraged a crackdown on women with bad hijab in the past, denied this, however. After the attacks in Isfahan and Majid was later released from jail without ever having to pay Amineh restitution, she is now uncertain whether she made the right decision. She felt as though if she had carried out the sentence, maybe the incidents in Isfahan would not have happened. Faced with growing numbers of acid attacks, Iranian authorities now believe retribution is the best way to respond. Recently, an Iranian man convicted of blinding another man in an acid attack was blinded in one eye. The convicted acid attacker was rendered unconscious in Rajai Shar prison in the city of Karaj as medics gouged out his left eye. As far as Amineh, she has undergone more than a dozen operations in Spain to reconstruct her face. At one point, she recovered partial sight in her right eye, but an infection in 2007 left her totally blind. The acid attack changed her life entirely. Her older brother, who was traumatized and clinically depressed by what had happened, took his own life in 2014. Despite all her torment, however, she is determined to move forward. She has even published the book, Eye for an Eye,